Hello students, I would like to welcome you once again to our lesson of today, which is process writing for English 102 and English 810, which is for the unified track and the vocational education. Before we start, it definitely comes to your mind, what is a process? As you can see here, we have put a picture of stairs. You may wonder why. When I say stairs, I mean steps. I have to take some steps on the stairs in order to achieve or accomplish a process. Let me just give you a brief introduction about a process. What is a process? A process is an operation or a procedure that needs to be achieved in several steps or stages. Now, let me start with the lesson objectives of today. By the end of this lesson, we are expecting to finish 3 main goals. The first one is to identify linkers as well as transitional phrases. After that, we are going to identify the layout of writing steps in a process. And last but not least, we are going to write and compose steps in a certain process. Let me start with the first objective. We are going to discuss the transitional words and linkers. There are some transitional words and linkers which specify the order of some stages, because when you talk about any process, anything comes into your mind, it should be done in some stages and steps in order to accomplish this process. So I have to mention that there is one stage comes before the other one. So I have to start with first or at first. Or I can say to begin with. And then when I move to the next stage, I should choose some other transitional words like then, next, after that, later, and there are more examples rather than those ones. And of course, when I come to the end and I want to finish the procedure, I have to say finally, at last, or to end. Now, let me ask you a very important question. Why do we use linkers? We use linkers for a certain process, which is to link sentences with each other. For example, this is a very short and easy example to clarify the linkers. You may check the inbox as well as the junk mail, for example. So here I am ordering the reader or the listener that he has to do 2 things, and both of them come together. So I'm using as well as. It could be and, it could be also. There are many linkers. Now let's move to the transitional phrases. There is a very simple difference between linkers and transitional phrases, and this is the purpose, to show the sequence. In other words, the order. Let's just imagine that we have a chain of some stages, and in order to show which one comes before the other one, I have to use some transitional phrases. Here is an example to clarify what I am explaining. For example, sanitize your hands, then eat the cupcake. So, sanitizing the hands comes before eating the cupcake. We are done with the first objective. Now we are going to move to the second objective, which is the layout of describing steps in a process. I am going to start with English 102. There is a very simple difference between English 102 and English 810 in the structure, in the layout of the writing, but we're going to start with 102 and I'm going to clarify that later on. Now, when I want to write steps of a process, I have to follow 3 main things in order to write it. So, The first paragraph, as you can see, my dear students, there is an introduction. What do I introduce? I have to introduce the process that you are going to describe. And I have to mention how many stages you are going to explain. For example, I can say that there are 6 stages or there are 8 stages. Of course, it depends on the process that you are describing. Moving to the second paragraph, we are going to describe the steps and the stages. Pay attention to this word, in details. Here, you have to tell me exactly what are you going to do in order to accomplish this step. In this case, I mean in this paragraph, we have to put in mind that using linkers as well as transitional phrases is a must. You have to use both of them in order to show the reader or the listener that you are telling him what exactly to do. Moving to the last paragraph, here I have to finalize the process and give any advice if you have any advice. In some cases, we don't need to give advices, so you don't need to do that. But what matters here, that you have to finalize and sum up the process. Let's see some examples that we need, that they need steps in order to be achieved and accomplished. One of the examples is setting an alarm system. Some houses have alarm systems. So when anyone wants to set the system, he has to follow a procedure of steps in order to accomplish this operation. Another example is connecting a Bluetooth device. Some cars and some speakers can be connected to a Bluetooth. And in order to accomplish this, we have to follow some steps. One more example is connecting a device with a Wi-Fi network. The same thing with pairing a smartwatch with a device. Last but not least, creating an email account. In order to signing up and creating an email account, you have to follow some stages. So these are some examples of processes that needs some steps to be achieved. Our topic of today that we have chosen is connecting a device with a Wi-Fi network. This is one of the most commonly used between students and between everyone. So that's why we have chosen it. Now, let's see what are the steps taken in order to accomplish this process. There are some steps we are mentioning here without details, because we're going to specify the details later on when we do the writing task. So, plug Wi-Fi router. After that, we have to make sure that it's on and it's working. We need to search for the Wi-Fi network. We have to choose a network. We have to enter the password. Finally, the last stage is to connect with the network that we have already searched for. Now here is the sample that you should follow in order to do the writing about steps in a process. Of course, as I have already mentioned and explained, it comes in 3 parts: the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. The first part is the introduction. Let's see. A new Wi-Fi router has been recently installed. Here are some basic instructions on how to connect a mobile device with a Wi-Fi network. There are 6 stages to be done. So, as I have already mentioned, we have to give a very brief introduction about the process that you are going to write about, as well as mentioning how many stages I am going to follow in order to have this process or procedure done. Moving to the second part, which is the body. Here where I have to mention the linkers as well as the transitional words that I have previously explained. Starting with, as you can see, they are in blue. Before you check the available connections, you need to do the following. Pay attention to this. First, and this is a transitional word, make sure the router is plugged. I'll bring to your attention the previous lesson that I have already explained about the grammar passive voice. And I said the importance of explaining the present simple passive comes in the next lesson, which is writing a process. Here in the next, in the second paragraph, part 2, I have to at least write 2 or 3 steps in passive form. So now here, as you can see, we have written one instruction in passive voice, and there is one more. So let me bring it to your attention again. Make sure the router is plugged. This is the passive voice. Let's go on, and it's on. Then, pay attention to then. This is another transitional word. Click on Settings and search for available Wi-Fi network. After that, and this is another transitional word, the available networks are shown, and this is again the passive form that we have taken previously on the page. Choose the Wi-Fi network and put the password. The last stage, finally click on Connect. If I mention those 6 stages with proper details, with transitional and linker phrases, as well as writing at least 2 passive sentences, I am done. It will be considered a great job that I'm doing. Moving to the last part, which is the conclusion, part 3. Here I have to sum up. Here where I can give recommendation, I have to finalize, and if you have any advice, you should point it out here. So, to sum up, since the connection is available, you can surf the net and make some downloads according to your needs. Full stop, and I'm done. As simple as it is. You have to follow the mind map and do a very simple and easy writing about process. Moving to the next subject, which is English 810. I have said previously that they both have the same writing, which is describing a process. So they both talk about stages and steps to be done in order to make a process. Here, I'd like to point out that there is a very simple difference. Let's pay attention. The first paragraph in English 810 for the vocational education starts with a greeting. It is written in a form of memo. So there is a certain layout that I have to follow. It's to and from, date, and the subject. And then here you have to address. It's dear, the listener or the speaker or the one who's getting the message. After that, we are doing the same exactly, where I have to introduce the process that I am going to describe. Moving to the second paragraph, which is exactly the same. It is the body, and here where I describe the steps and the stages in details. Let me repeat this again. I have to use linkers as well as transitional phrases. The last paragraph here is the big difference and the very easy one, which is troubleshooting problems. Here, in this case, I have to mention at least 2 problems I am facing while doing the process and suggest solutions for the problems. Let me clarify that with showing you a sample writing for what I'm talking about. This is part 1, my dear students. As you can see, it's starting with a form that I have to follow in all the writings for the process 810. It starts with to, and let's assume that this memo is sent to all teachers. From, let's assume again it's from the principal. You have to specify a date and you have to mention the subject. The subject is what are you talking about. So in this case, we have instructions for connecting a device with a Wi-Fi network. Let's see. As I have said before, I have to address it to someone formally. So, dear teachers. Why did I mention teachers? Because I am sending it to teachers. This case could be different, maybe to students. So here will be dear students. A new Wi-Fi router has been recently installed. Here are some basic instructions on how to connect a mobile device with a Wi-Fi network. Again, there are 6 stages to be done. Moving to part 2, the second paragraph, which is the body, I have to mention a heading. Here we have the instructions. I just clarified that these are the instructions, and this paragraph is exactly the same as the one I have already explained. You have to mention transitional words and linkers, and you go with the same stages exactly. It depends on the process that you are doing. I'm repeating the same because our lesson is the same about connecting a Wi-Fi with a device. Moving to the last paragraph, which is part 3, the conclusion. Here again, I have to mention the heading, which is troubleshooting problems. There is A and there is B. In this case here, in this case here, I have to mention 2 problems I'm going through while doing and applying the stages and the steps. For example, what are the problems that could come up when I connect a device to a Wi-Fi network? If you click on network name, any network, and it doesn't connect, comma, here I have to give a solution. You will need to click on forget device, then search again and reconnect. This is one problem along with the solution. Let me move to the second one. If you search again, but the connection still doesn't show or doesn't come out, here the solution, you will need to switch off the Wi-Fi router or restart it in order to reconnect. It's very simple. I just have to mention a heading, which is troubleshooting problems, and I have to bring up 2 problems that I could face while doing these steps and provide or suggest a solution for each one of these 2 problems. This is how it goes. This is the way that I should do the writing for describing a process. Before I end my lesson, my dear students, I'll give you a very simple task that you could do at home. I'll ask you to write a description of any process from your choice. You can choose anyone. You can refer back to the examples that I gave you, or you can choose anything from your own. You may follow the structure that is mentioned at the book. It will help you to write something similar, and it will help you in practicing. You can use English 810 for the seniors, which is in page 70. For the first level, from the unified track, you may use English 102 book, page 77. Don't forget that you have to use linkers as well as transitional phrases. Here we come to the end of our lesson. I hope it was interesting and it changed the meaning of process writing from your minds and it added to your values. Thank you for watching and I wish you the best of luck.